space for conversation around women's health through the lens of naturopathic and Eastern medicine. I am Sandy Ross, and this is Her Earth Medicine Podcast. This podcast is multi-leveled. Episodes for patient education to graduate practitioner level. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you gain value from this episode. Today on the podcast, I have a special guest, Geoff Beaty, who is a herbalist and naturopath. Geoff was trained by a third-generation herbalist and naturopath, which gave Geoff a deep respect for the traditions in Western herbal medicine and an amazing amount of knowledge about the bounty of the natural world that provides our food and natural medicine. He finished his training in herbal medicine over 35 years ago, and of course, learning about health and medicine never ceases, so he continues to study and learn today. Geoff's reputation was built on his ability to diagnose the underlying cause of disease beyond the signs and symptoms, getting to the root cause and not stopping with the first level, but continuing to delve deeper into the understanding of dis-ease that is before him. This approach, not just treating the symptoms, but also going deeper and dealing with the condition that creates the disease in the first place, gets Geoff his lasting results. His area of special interests are cancer and microcirculation, which include neuropathy, nephropathy, and retinopathy. Today on the podcast, I'm going to be chatting with Geoff all things adaptogenic herbal medicine. Whether you're a practitioner or a patient, this podcast will give you insight as to how to use and prescribe adaptogenic herbal medicine. I'm so excited to chat with Geoff, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the podcast, Geoff.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, most of my practice was in Western Australia.
Oh, right.
In Fremantle, actually, and I was there, and my business name was Being Alive. So, and herbal medicine was the core of what the business and the treatment protocols were all about. So I was trained by Kathy Dunn. She's a third-generation herbalist, and she's still there in Wanneroo in Western Australia with a very big clinic. She manufactures her own herbs.
Oh, cool.
And she's an amazing woman, and very privileged to be taught with that tradition. Of course, there were things that I had to add. Science and Western medical understanding were not featured very strongly in that education. So over the years, I've had to add a lot of other things to it. But the core is still the same. Herbal medicine is just incredible in what it can do, and we still really don't have the full scientific understanding of what herbal medicine brings to us. And I'll talk more about that as we go through looking at adaptogens.
Okay, cool. All right, well, let's dive straight in, Geoff. Can you tell us what are adaptogens and how do they work in the body?
It was in the late 40s where I believe it was a Russian created or came up with the idea of adaptogenic herbs, and basically it's the body's improving the body's ability to adapt to stress of any sort. And the category was started then, but I have actually split it a little bit because I think there are two main areas of adaptogenic function. So I call a small group the super adaptogens. So a lot of the others, so let's take elderberry, it's very good with viruses and it's very good with the lungs and a few things like that. And if we look at licorice, it's very good with the cortisol and it does support the adrenals and it does help with stress, but it's good with bone density, but that's about it. So, and it's good with gut lining. And astragalus, we look, it's fantastic in the immune system and improves digestion, but that's it. Whereas if we look at the super adaptogens, they affect everything. So that's Panax ginseng, rhodiola, Siberian ginseng, and withania. Some people also think about noto ginseng in that area too, but the and American ginseng, but I sort of in my head put them out because Noto ginseng is too drying, and so it's only useful in very narrow circumstances. For most people, it just dries them out too much. And American ginseng's very expensive.
Yeah.
So it's very good because it's cooling, and it has a lot of these other benefits, but its expense makes it you really got to want to use that for something specific, and I don't think it's that specific. It's just cooling, and so if we have a look at that, rhodiola is also cooling. So, and withania is only slightly warming, and if you put a bitter with it, it's going to be effectively cooling. So you can deal with that fairly easily in your formula. But the importance of these super adaptogens is that they affect every system in your body. And some of them are better at some things and some are at others. But whether it's mental performance, physical performance, nervous system, endocrine system, bone, skeletal system, muscle, every single area they have an effect in. So let's pick
Rhodiola.
Okay, so rhodiola, it's cooling, so it's the only one that by itself is cooling, and so that's quite important.
Yeah, because a lot of the adaptogens are warming.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because they improve the system, and they, I think, came about in very cold countries.
Yeah, well, you think of traditional use throughout
Northern
Asia.
China and Russia, then that was a very important part. And so warming is key in them. But today we live in a society where food is relatively easy, and we get nutrient-dense, high quality foods in general, if we want to do that. And also people tend to run a bit warmer because of that. So women tend to run a bit cooler, and so they often need the warming herbs generally, but many men tend to run hot. And that heat, and of course, the easy way to tell is who's the warmest one in bed, and 9 times out of 10 it's the male. So and if you overheat somebody, they get restless, they can't sleep, they can't relax, and so that creates a whole lot of other problems over time. But what is rhodiola's keynote? It's mental performance. So it really improves mental functioning. Now, all of the others do as well. They all improve memory. They all improve mental performance. They all improve reaction time. But rhodiola is just the best in the brain. Withania is best in the nervous system.
Calming.
Its name gives you a hint. It's said Withania somnifera, so it's helpful in the sleep, particularly. So very good in sleep, but it's much more powerful than that.
Well, it's like an Indian ginseng, the Ayurveda.
Absolutely. But in the nervous system, probably the best bit of science that gives us an indication of how powerful it is with drug withdrawal.
Oh, right. Wow.
So, in morphine and heroin withdrawal, they've done some experiments with rats, get them addicted to morphine.
As they do.
Yes.
Poor rats.
During the withdrawals, they find that the spinal cord and parts of the brain shrink by as much as 50%, which is why the side effects of withdrawal from heroin and morphine are so severe.
Yeah.
Withania stops that 100%. So it protects the nervous system so powerfully that a powerful acting drug being withdrawn that normally causes severe damage to the nervous system doesn't happen. Now that's incredible that a simple herb can do that. It's incredible. So it not only does that, but it's also, and all of these herbs are all anti-acetylcholinesterase.
Yes. Now, I love that one.
That's a technical term.
I think of the vagus nerve. with the
Absolutely.
acetylcholine, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Working like it.
So what does anti-acetylcholinesterase mean? Well, acetylcholine is the lining of the nerves and also the brain. It's the white matter. Acetylcholinesterase is an enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine, and anti-acetylcholinesterase is a herb or drug that slows that down. So when it slows down the breakdown of acetylcholine, it allows it to build up because the body continues to manufacture it. So what this does is it helps rebuild nerves and parts of the brain. So you get better performance in memory, better performance in brain, better performance in reaction time. All of these areas are affected, and improvements in neuropathy. So there are other specific herbs that are very good, but all of these herbs support the nervous system. So just the withania is the best one for the nervous system.
Because I find a lot of people's diets is very depleted in choline, unless they're having eggs or soy product. So, it is important to be able to add these things into people's prescription if they're not getting it.
Yes.
The brain needs that support, that extra support. Can I ask on withania, what indications should people not take it with? Because it's a very trending herb at the moment.
Well, it is part of the Solanaceae family, and so some people with Solanaceae allergies, so that's potatoes, capsicum, pepper.
The delicious ones.
Yeah, all of those lovely foods, tomatoes. They can have a problem with it. Although I actually have a couple of clients who have a problem with Solanaceae, no problem with withania. So it's one of those herbs, because it's not superheating and it's so good for the nervous system, nearly everybody can have it.
Okay.
It's a rare thing when they can't have it, as opposed to Panax, which is quite much more strongly heating. So really good with older people whose whole system is cooling, and younger females who tend to run cool. Fantastic. But if you give it to a hot, angry bloke, it's likely to make him hotter and angrier. So that's a caution that you need to take with Panax. However, it's incredibly powerful. It works
fast too, I think.
It works very fast, and it's probably the best one with the respiratory system. So with our current situation with respiratory diseases being at the front, it's probably the best performing one for recovery from lung disease.
Wow, okay, super interesting. Okay, so, and a lot of these herbs too, coming from Asia, we talk about them a lot in traditional Chinese medicine as kidney tonics as well. Being the ginsengs are very good for the kidneys. Is there any contraindication with some of these herbs you've just mentioned, the ginseng, withania, rhodiola, in children?
Not really. Dosage is the key thing.
Okay.
So, look, I've treated children from babies up, and the thing about Siberian Paps and Panax is that they're quite stimulating, and so you just got to be a little careful. However, having said that, they're also very supportive of a developing nervous system. So again, they're not herbs to be given on their own. It's in a formula for the individual, and if you balance it and you get it right for the child, there's nothing wrong with giving it to children. The synergy of putting them together, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, cool. Right, I just wanted to ask that. Okay, go on, the super adaptogens.
So we haven't talked about Siberian yet. Siberian perhaps doesn't get as much attention as it should, because it has some problems with drug excretion.
Okay.
So people do avoid it because so many people are on drugs today. However, it is the highest energy producer. If you need some energy, Siberian will get you the best energy response. They all pick up physical energy, but Siberian is by far the best.
Okay.
And this is why also we see a lot of combinations of these in some of the commercial products, because they're wanting to get...
Used to be a little shot when I worked in the health food shop as a student, Siberian ginseng.
Yep.
These little vial things.
Look, it's an amazing herb, and it's the best immune modulator of all.
Yes.
So they're all immune modulators,
Yep.
but it's the best.
Okay.
So... it's a very, very useful herb. The immune modulation, it goes as far as there's research showing that it actually calms down mast cells in allergic reactions. So that's really important. So, if you've got someone having an anaphylactic reaction and you don't have an EpiPen, a big shot of Siberian may give you a bit of time to get them to a place where they can have...
If you've got a shot of ginseng around.
Yeah. Well, as herbalists, we often do.
Yeah,
but we don't have an EpiPen in our... Some surgeries do, some clinics do, but not everybody does. So having that available and knowing you can do it, it's like cayenne and a heart attack. A shot of cayenne will get the heart going again. So it's a very useful, just little thing to know for our first aid kit.
Yeah, right, okay.
Blood's another interesting one.
Yes, love stuff around blood.
Yeah.
Chinese medicine. Very
So the best is withania.
Yeah.
And Codonopsis. So Codonopsis improves blood profile. Withania improves all the blood parameters. It's well known for producing red blood cells, which it does incredibly well, and I got a little story to say about that. But it also improves platelets and white cell counts as well.
Okay, I've always thought of Withania as such a female ginseng, and I don't know if that's my own theory I came up with, if I read it somewhere, but
it's actually has better numbers than Panax for male sexual improvement.
Yeah, I suppose it's in a lot of the formulas, isn't
it? Yeah. So in terms of improving...
I'd always go for one of the ginsengs, though, for men over Withania, that's for sure.
But again, you run into the problem with Panax of overheating.
Yeah.
So you can use it, it's low dose, but Withania you can use in a big dose.
Yeah, great,
and not have the problem. And
what dose are you talking?
Oh, yeah, well, dosage is another interesting thing. So our dosage that's on our bottles here is significantly lower than is used in their country of origin.
Okay.
So, in fact, Panax is about half of what the Chinese tend to use theirs for. So they use 15 to 30 grams a day.
Wow.
Big doses.
Yeah.
Whereas ours is much like up to 6, I think, is on the bottle.
Is that because of the way that you're extracting it, though? And you're probably getting it, I mean, if it's an alcohol tincture, it's enhanced through that.
I don't know that
boiling
that's correct.
it up with the volatile oils all being extracted.
Yeah, the volatiles will be gone in the boiling. That's true. Although Panax ginseng, the volatiles, there aren't any because of the process that it's been through to get to be Korean red ginseng. They steam it.
Yeah.
So there are no volatiles left.
Okay, right. Didn't know that. Interesting.
So whereas with all the others, they're definitely there. Panax for a male, though, to be on for any period of time can be overheating and and overstimulating. Whereas Withania doesn't do that. And the numbers on sperm volume, sperm count, sperm motility are incredible. Like
on Withania.
On Withania.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, really high. So that's and all of them are good with erectile dysfunction. Premature ejaculation, Siberian is not, but all the others are helpful in that. So in male sexuality, they're all good. It's just you've got to watch that heating function. Because you tend to have them on it for a while to get, the sperm count changes relatively quickly within 2 to 3 months. And quality. But whereas with women's fertility, it takes longer generally.
Yes.
With males change fairly quickly because eggs take longer to mature, whereas sperm, it's very, very quick.
Yeah, okay.
But there's another factor in sexual health that is today not talked about, and that's my other thing, which you said in the beginning, microcirculation. Microcirculation is key in fertility, and it is under-researched because Western medicine has no treatment. But it's a subject for another podcast because it is a very big subject.
Okay, and I know you have a big passion for it.
Yes, and herbal medicine is really and diet are the only things that will actually repair the microcirculation, and it can be repaired.
Yeah.
And in terms of these herbs that we're talking about today, probably the only one with a really serious repair function in the microcirculation is rhodiola.
Oh, okay.
And if you think about it, so microcirculation is about repairing the lining of the blood vessels, and this is a function of the astringent components of herbs. And so, your really powerful ones like maritime pine and arjuna and those sorts of herbs are very astringent. So if you taste these 4 herbs, which one's astringent? It's rhodiola. So if it's well made, so it's got to be well made, and it's very powerfully astringent. Unfortunately, some of the manufacturers make it in stainless steel, and unfortunately the stainless steel pulls rosin out, which is one of those things that's astringent. So it actually sticks to the stainless steel.
Rhodiola is more expensive too, isn't it? It's one of those...
Withanias and Siberian are cheaper, that's true. Rhodiola and Panax are
so I'm just thinking when people buy them, because I've seen some in some like sport products for endurance and whatnot.
Yes.
And I think, I wonder what the quality is like in there, because the price of that product isn't very much. So it does come into it, doesn't it?
Yes. Manufacturing, there's a whole box of issues there. Retaining the volatiles is important for rhodiola, Siberian, and withania, and there's some evidence that with that powerful effect on the nervous system, that the volatiles in withania are significantly a part of that. I haven't seen the science on other areas, but it's very interesting. And this is what I'm coming to is that you've got to be careful about how these things are manufactured. So if you go above a 1-in-1, so if you go to a 2-in-1, what do you lose? So at 1-in-1, that's the maximum you can extract without some form of concentration. And when you concentrate, the easiest way is with heating. So, and by heating, you lose stuff. The most obvious stuff is the volatile oils. So there are other things that you can lose, but volatiles start to come off at around between 40 and 70 degrees. And the volatiles are incredibly powerful components of any herb. And so it's very important to make sure that the manufacturing retains them.
Okay, great to know.
And so, but anything above a 1-in-1, so you go to your 2-in-1, you've lost stuff. But, there are many herbs today that we see where they're concentrated hugely, like ginkgo, one of the tablets is, I think, 26 to 1.
Wow.
Some of them are 50 to 1. And so 50 to 1, and the ginkgo, I can remember, it's 12 grams of herb made down to a 240 milligram tablet. What's missing? 11.75 grams of something is missing. It's not there. So, and of course they standardise against things that they know work, but this isn't always beneficial. So if we have a look at St John's wort, they standardise against hypericin, but they now know, which was what we thought was the most active principle, we now know it's not. That there are things, other elements inside St John's wort that are major actives. So if they're standardising against hypericin, they're losing other stuff.
Yeah. So quality, super important.
Yeah.
Very
1-in-1s is the maximum you can go to get a full spectrum herb.
Okay. Now, I might be biased because I practice Chinese medicine, but one of my favourite adaptogens is Romania, and I use it a lot. Obviously, I do a lot of female health and menopause and stuff like that, and we have traditional formulas where we use it a lot in high dose. Yeah, so can we touch on Romania a little?
Well, both Romania and licorice, when you're using an adaptogen, I would use one or the other of those herbs, because you need food for the adrenal, all the chemicals that the adrenals produce, and Romania and licorice provide that. So why would you choose one or the other? So for me, licorice, the key thing about it is it retains cortisol. Romania does not. So in retaining cortisol, so someone who's a bit puffy, overweight, I'd tend not to use licorice. I'd use Romania in preference. Two very important herbs. And Romania is one of those things that is traditional Chinese medicine, and it goes through some processes as well before we get it. So even what we call the raw, it's processed, and it doesn't have any volatiles either.
Yeah, it comes in a few forms.
Yes. Yeah. So I think there's 5 different forms that the Chinese have. I can't remember them all, but one of them that sounded really interesting is that after it's brought to its raw form, then they fry it in honey.
Yeah, cooked Romania.
Yeah. So, but there are multiple ways that they change the chemistry of Romania and many other herbs to change the effects.
Yeah. Okay. Can I ask you about herbs for, in particular, high cortisol levels when someone comes in? Because that is something I think a lot of practitioners have a little confusion around with adaptogens. Which ones we can use for people with high cortisol and what their symptom picture might look like if we're not looking at it in bloods, versus someone with low cortisol and what their symptom picture might look like.
So that's very simple. Siberian ginseng is the only one that doesn't lower cholesterol. All the others... cortisol, rather. They all lower cholesterol, all of them.
Yeah,
but,
great.
Cortisol, they all lower it except for Siberian.
Okay.
So lowering cortisol is important today because there are so many people that are just... Stress is, for people that I talk to, 80% of their client base is they're in because of stress. So it's a very important area. And it
drives all the diseases that we are seeing anyway. It's the underlying cause.
Absolutely. And this, of course, as a good herbalist, is that we actually really need to be very careful not to treat just the symptoms, but to be going to the cause. And unfortunately, a lot of the training today doesn't do that as effectively as traditional naturopathy and herbalism. There is a movement now called functional medicine, which out of the USA, which is all about that. It's looking at the symptom picture and going beyond and finding the functional cause of what's going on. But it's how I was trained. Don't pay too much attention just to the symptoms. Find out what's causing it.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that, you won't repair it permanently. No. You're only going to put a Band-Aid on it, make them feel better for a little while. As soon as they stop doing what they're doing, which most people will do after a while, then it's going to be back.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of all these new tests that we have available in the functional medicine field, and Dutch in particular is one I use. And I'm seeing cortisol awakening response and seeing people with flatline cortisol, and that's why in particular that question I had for you, because I'm seeing a lot of people with low cortisol, and young women too. So
and this is why Romania and licorice are so important.
Licorice
and they need to be in those formulas.
Licorice is the one that's used in Chinese medicine in all the herbal formulas. It encapsulates, because it enters all the 12 meridians. So
that's right.
The Chinese think it's a safe one to use.
Well, When I first started practice,
that's in low dose too. They only have
yes,
tiny,
it's very low
and that's
dose.
Chinese herbs, isn't it? Low dose,
absolutely. Synergist.
Yeah.
As a synergist. When I first started using licorice back in the early '80s, we hardly ever saw a problem with it. Whereas today, we're starting to see people have a problem with fluid retention and blood pressure with licorice, and it's much more common than it was years ago. And I think that's a function of the state of the kidneys and circulation for people because of the 20th century problem, 21st century problem. Sorry.
Yeah, right.
Even in the past.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of duration of taking these herbs. So if someone comes in sort of in the alarm phase versus that kind of phase of exhaustion, so where they have that more high cortisol versus a low cortisol, what kind of length of time do they need this treatment for? I know it's very individualised.
Yes.
But, like does someone stay on these herbs forever? Do they take them for 2 years? Kind of what does it look like in terms of length?
Well, look, that's a very complex question because you get a young athlete come in, you can put them on something for a very short time if they're stressed out, and that's all they need, and a child the same. But the majority of the patients we see coming through the door are chronic patients. Today, when I first started practice, there were a lot of acute patients. Now you hardly get any because they're dealt with in the chemist or the health food shop where there's a free naturopath. And even though they might not deal with the underlying cause, in fact, highly likely they will not deal with the underlying cause, they will give them something that gets them through. So what happens is we end up seeing people who've been got through, but the underlying cause never dealt with, so they become a chronic multifactorial train wreck. And so...
nice and good.
Well, it means then that it takes time to rebuild what's going on with them. So, and of course you have to find probably multiple causative factors and deal with them appropriately, and that takes time.
Yeah. Well, that's good to note because I guess sometimes you put people on a treatment and they expect to feel a difference in a week or two where, you might be treating something that they've had for years, and we always say, 1 month to 1 year of the condition for treatment, give or take.
But it's more like 2, but anyway. You're exactly right. But this is being a good practitioner is helping them deal with what's happening in the moment, but also dealing with the real cause.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to prescribe something that will give them a lift or alleviate their signs and symptoms for the moment, but also inform them that it's going to take a while to rebuild and that we can't do that immediately.
Yeah.
And if you are able to make them feel better in the moment, they're more likely to stay with you for longer. But this brings up another question, which we started a bit earlier with dosage, because one of the problems I see today with a lot of practitioners is that they're not dosing enough.
So too low.
Too low. Okay. Particularly for acute things, it's okay to use more.
It's because you can't fit enough herbs in the bottle, Geoff.
But that's because you're limiting it to 100 ml in a week, which is not, that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
That's how we're trained.
So but it's not correct.
Yeah.
This is something that came about from the marketing arm of one particular company, which will remain nameless.
Okay.
But they train people that you had to do it within 100 ml, and it's not correct. So it also depends on how you build a formula, and I like the Chinese philosophy for that. That is, you pick an emperor, most important herb, 2 or 3 executives, and a bunch of peons.
I haven't heard that one.
Okay, so I really like that way of putting it together. So because in the symptom picture and the causes that you see in the person that you're dealing with, there will be a herb that is the key herb. And it's important to give the right dosage. And this then brings up that some of the companies also don't have the correct dosage on the bottle.
Yeah, because when you look at a TCM formula, it is exactly like that. There's a higher dose one and then they kind of go down.
That's right. So And that also means that you need to have a good handle on what herbs are very effective in low dose. And so there are some really powerful herbs that are very low dose, like maritime pine, like pokerit, like adatoda, so there's these very low dose herbs that have an incredible effect. And they still might be your emperor, but it gives you that ability to have these low dose herbs as the peons that are quite powerful in their effect. But if you don't know, let's pick a herb for an example. Elecampane is an easy one to deal with. The British Pharmacopoeia dose range is 32.5 grams to 84 grams.
Yeah, that's big.
That's big. Most of the companies, their dose range is 20 to 40 mil of a 1 in 2, which means the max dose is 20 grams, which doesn't even meet the bottom dose of British Pharmacopoeia, which is,
you're not going to have an effect.
Well, or the effect as a synergistic herb will be okay, but it won't be powerful. And elecampane is an interesting herb because it's very high in volatile oils. It's a very good biofilm stripper, which is why it was key for tuberculosis.
The lungs. Yeah, okay. That's a good point then, isn't it, too?
Yeah.
I've never thought about actually changing the structure of the herbal to make it for not 100 ml per week. I mean, we do with some herbs, but yeah, you're right. It is embedded in us to think like that.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's also, there's only one company that actually puts approximately the British Pharmacopoeia doses on, and that's Herbal Extracts.
Oh, right, okay.
So all of the other companies have their own ranges for... I don't know the real reason why. For me, British Pharmacopoeia or other authoritative texts like North American Pharmacopoeia will give us most of the time the correct dose. There are herbs that they're not great at, and these are mostly Asian herbs. So Withania is a good example. The dose range in British Pharmacopoeia is 15 to 40 grams a week. But in India, they'll do more than 40 grams in a day. So, and there's very little side effects too. And this is also the other beauty about herbs, the side effects we haven't started talking about yet. But so that tells us that the Indians, they use it very liberally, and so perhaps we need to review our dosage range for some of these Asian herbs. Yeah,
good point. Can you give us a little breakdown on the ginsengs? So we know there's five ginsengs.
Panax, Siberian,
American,
Noto ginseng, American, quinquefolium. What's the fifth one?
Korean? Did you say Korean?
Yeah, Panax,
okay.
Korean,
Panax,
same.
Korean, yep. I can't think.
Are you including Codonopsis? Because it's a poor man's ginseng, but it's not a ginseng. Its chemistry is entirely different, even though it works almost the same as Panax, just not as powerfully.
Okay. So, there's, I can't remember, I won't name any companies, but there's a ginseng 5 formula, and that's why I always think 5.
They probably put Withania in there.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I can't remember. I haven't used it in a long time. Know. But anyway, so I know there's a little bit of confusion around the ginsengs. Can you give us a little breakdown on them?
Why use one as opposed to another?
Yeah, which one we can use for endurance versus sleep versus...
Yeah, so look, they're all good at endurance, but when you're talking endurance, Siberian has the best performance. It also has the best evidence in bone density, but they're all good with bone density. So that's actually an interesting bit of research.
Which we don't think about too with the ginsengs. We go for other things, but that's you were talking to me last time we met up about that, and I found that so fascinating about the adaptogen's role with bone health. Yeah. Well,
because it's the progesterone and adrenals control all of that. So the adaptogens are incredibly important. The ones with really powerful evidence are so all of these that we're talking about: Panax, Rhodiola, Siberian, Withania. but astragalus and teasel root and romania. So all have good scientific evidence. Excuse my throat.
That's all right.
I'm actually a survivor of a treatment for cancer, so it affects my throat.
Okay, yeah, right. Okay, so in terms of with the ginsengs for sleep, because I feel like
all of them help sleep.
Okay, so it's adaptogen working on circadian rhythm more so than putting you to sleep though, like a sedative.
No. Well, in my mind, that's not the case. The best circadian rhythm herb is St. John's.
Oh, St. John's.
Yeah, it's very powerful in correcting circadian rhythms.
All right.
But Siberian is not so good with sleep, but all of the others are.
Yeah, okay.
So it still helps with sleep over time, but and all of them, when you initially take it, if you're not taking other things, will often make it more difficult to get to sleep. However, it will improve your sleep quality.
Okay.
So why is that? It's all about adrenals. So to sleep well, your adrenals need to be in reasonably good order. One of the causes of waking up after sleeping for a short period of time is adrenal exhaustion. So what that means, so when the adrenals get tired, so the adrenals, when they work, they switch on and off all day. So they're excreting little bits of adrenaline. You know, go to stand up, bit of adrenaline. You think about something, I've got to do this, a bit of adrenaline all day. When the adrenals get exhausted, instead of opening up and closing as they should all day, they stay open. You run out of adrenaline, you're exhausted, you go to bed, there's no adrenaline, you sleep for a couple of hours, and bang, adrenaline starts being produced, you wake up.
Recovery, yep.
So getting them, strengthening the adrenals so that they close off during sleep so that's why all of the adaptogens are so important. They will help sleep.
Would you avoid taking them in the evening, maybe the first couple of weeks of your treatment?
Yes.
So that's stimulating.
Except for withania.
Okay, yeah,
withania will actually help sleep.
Yep. Okay, great.
All the time. So, but the others, yes, just take them
instead of your coffee.
Dinner time. Yeah, absolutely. Morning, but also down to dinner time, and then don't take a nighttime. Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen all the buzz trend now is putting all these adaptogens in with your coffee.
No. A new type of chai, huh?
Yeah, it's funny because, I mean, adaptogens is sort of what was around instead of coffee and soda.
Yeah.
Traditionally.
Yep.
But now we're adding it to our coffee, so we get an extra kick.
But that's perhaps an indication of why about people's stress levels.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. Can I touch on children? Okay, because I feel like today with technology and whatnot, we're seeing a lot of stressed out kids. Anxiety obviously is one that comes into it, which is a little bit different when we're talking about adaptogens versus like nervine tonics. But I'd love for you to just touch on prescribing herbs for children with stress.
I treat them just the same as adults, although there are some herbs that are particularly great for kids. Mugwort is one. It's a beautiful nervine for children. It's also anti-parasitic.
Yep.
So a lot of the little parasites that, particularly pinworms, that kids seem to get from playing around in the garden. Which can be stubborn
to treat.
It's good with that.
Yeah, okay.
And it helps them sleep, although it does make your dreams quite a lot more vivid.
Okay.
But mugwort for kids is a great herb over time. But to cope with the stressful situation, absolutely. These herbs, all herbs.
And they're so stimulated. That's the thing I'm seeing is all these kids, and they're kind of, wake up, go to school, go to kindy, come home, do the routine, do the thing, and then devices too.
Yeah. So calming them down and giving their adrenals capacity
a bit
is
of passion
great.
flower for them all, but
absolutely.
Yeah, my kids love taking herbs. They're so good at it. They've had them since the get-go. Basically, they'll ask for it. If they know if they got a cough, they'll come to me.
My kids
get the herbs up. Yep.
Yeah, although
they sometimes go, what was that one, Mum?
About the taste.
Mine usually love them, but yeah.
Yeah, and now our older kids, you know, when they're sick, first thing they do is come looking.
Yeah.
So they don't always look after themselves the best, but they know what to do when things are not right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
so besides tinctures, as a herbalist, what other ways do you love to include herbal medicine in your life?
I'm a bit of a cook.
You're a cook,
so
yep.
Culinary herbs, fresh culinary herbs are fantastic.
Yep.
And I use them in teas as well, but mostly I'm what they might call a brown bottle herbalist.
Yeah.
Because I'm busy. You know, I'd love to be able to manufacture, but this again is another problem. Today we are seeing contaminants in herbs, and one of the advantages of the big companies is that they can test for these contaminants. Whereas, you know, what's a good example? Bacopa, it sucks up heavy metals out of the soil. It also sucks out heavy metals out of us. But if we have no way of testing whether it's got heavy metals, then we've got a problem. So, and unfortunately...
Doesn't it come from India?
Does it grow in China? Yeah, and it grows really well here too.
Yeah, okay.
Bacopa. But if it's grown in a place where heavy metals are in the ground or the water quality is poor, you're going to have heavy metals in the herb. And this is true not just Bacopa, it's probably just one of the worst ones.
Yeah.
And whereas the big companies, all of them, have the capacity to test and make sure that the quality is good.
Yeah, okay.
So it's part of them being TGA certified that they have to be able to do these things.
I remember when I was practicing in Bangkok in Thailand that there was a company starting to grow spirulina and chlorella on the rooftops in the in Bangkok City, and I thought, don't know how I'd like to take that.
No.
That's not the environment you want it grown in.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, these are really important things to think about too. So, I mean, I love to cook as well. So I use a lot of my herbal medicine. I love to garden.
Yep.
So I love to grow. I mean, like rosemary is the easiest herb in the world to grow, isn't it? And then
absolutely.
The power of the brain for that one.
Yeah.
The smell too. And I think, like I like to think, you know, as a woman, you can have these little rituals that you do, you know, lavender to help you calm down and put in the bath for kids and stuff like that. But
beautiful.
Yeah, people forget about these other ways that we can include herbal medicine in our lifestyle. So,
well, today the diffusers are very popular as well, using essential oils.
Yeah, it's good now that they're diffusing them rather than burning them.
Yes,
like I used to do. Okay, cool. Anything else you want to share on the adaptogens before we wrap it up? You've given us so much insight. Have we covered your favourite adaptogens?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, those 4 are the ones that I use all the time.
Yeah,
and probably the number one out of that lot is Withania.
Okay.
Because of its nervous system.
Tastes the worst.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I had some before you came, actually. I was like, oh, Geoff's coming. But am I Withania?
Because it's calming in its effect more than the others. So we all have a stress problem, but many of us need to have that calming component. And so Withania is perhaps one of my favourite herbs. So maritime pine is probably the top, but Withania comes in close.
Okay. But Withania, the only concern I have with Withania is the accessibility people have at the moment. It's everywhere, isn't it? You can see it in all sorts of products these days in all sorts of doses, and I've seen patients that are taking it and they've had no effect from it because of the quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, they're like, oh, I've been taking this though, and you think, oh God, you know, what's the quality?
Yep. Yeah.
So.
Look, we are in a very fortunate position in Australia. All of the herbal manufacturers are TGA certified. TGA certification is a very difficult thing to come by. It means that the quality is good.
Good, yeah.
Now, selecting from the companies, look, I'm a real old school herbalist and I like 1-in-1s, and that gives me, there's only one company that does that of the big 3. So that's herbal extracts. But the quality across the board is good.
What about absorption?
Absorption, because of the alcohol, you cut down that's one of the big problems. So if you're taking raw herb and your gut's in a very poor shape, your absorption's going to be limited. Whereas with the ethanolic extracts, the alcohol just goes straight into your bloodstream and takes a lot of that.
You feel it, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
You can,
Yeah. And, it's only a very small amount of alcohol, and it's not a health problem at the levels that it's at, but it does mean that it bypasses digestion and you get an immediate effect that's not reduced because of your gut state.
Okay. And would you space out a 3-day dose, or do you do 2-day dose? Do you morning, evening with dosing for some of these adaptogenic herbs?
Look, three a day is traditionally what I do, but some people can't do
Compliance is hard, yeah.
Yeah, so
obviously, though,
morning and night.
The stimulating ones we just keep to the morning and afternoon for the first few weeks.
That's right. So, but you'll find once the adrenals get into good shape, it doesn't matter when you take it. So it's only in the first couple of weeks of taking those stimulating.
Okay, and you're right. It's so important also the individuality of the patient as to the duration, because I might be seeing kind of younger women and stuff like that, or postnatal depleted mums. So some of them need it for a bit longer, but some of them don't. Versus cancer patients, right. Neuropathy, that sort of stuff. They're going to need it for a lot longer. So. Yes. Yeah, it is obviously advisable.
Totally patient dependent. And of course, you'll have a patient that they'll do it for a little while, they feel better and they'll stop. And a couple of months later, they realise that they really should have kept going, and you'll see them again.
So you don't think there's, besides with the Panax, you don't think there's anyone that you can take for too long without doing?
Oh, look, it is good to cycle them. So Withania is one that I've found that you can have ongoing, but the others I would tend to not have someone on an ongoing basis. I'd swap them around a bit. It depends also on what you're trying to treat. Bone density is, as we talked about earlier, there are multiple herbs that do that. But interestingly, the one with the highest quality research is Siberian.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, right. Did you want to share your little story on Withania?
Well, look, I'm a cancer survivor, and the first cancer I had was a gut one, and it meant that I lost 6 pints of blood overnight. And it took them a while to find out what it was, but they said you're probably going to need surgery, and at 6 pints of blood left, you're going to need a transfusion before you have surgery. So I set about doing everything I could to get my iron levels up and my red blood cell count back up. So normally with taking iron as a supplement with vitamin C and diet, you can expect to make 1 pint in a month. It took them 30 days to find out what was going on before I went in for surgery. I built 4 pints, and that was with Withania and diet. So by increasing, by having pate for lunch, chicken liver pate.
That'll do it.
That and Withania.
Organic, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I made 4 pints instead of 1.
That's amazing.
And so didn't need a transfusion.
Yeah, because it's certainly not the one I always think to, except for after talking with you, when I'm thinking of blood building. But
yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is incredible.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And the interesting thing is it doesn't. And this is the thing about most herbs are modulatory. So it doesn't keep building red blood cells past when you get to what you need. You don't keep on going. It gets you to where you should be. And it comes back to my idea of super adaptogens, that they bring you to where you should be. Super functional, and so, but not over the top where it causes problems.
Amazing. Cool. All right, Geoff. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. It's been, great to have you on the podcast, and I'm sure if you're up to it, we'll have you back on later on. And where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
It's an absolute pleasure, Sandy. I really enjoyed this chat. It's great.
Yeah, it's great.
And nothing better than talking about herbs.
No, of course, with the master.
Yeah. Look, I'm a consultant for herbal extracts, and I'm doing a little extra work at Cassia Wellness as a practitioner.
Okay, great. Thank you so much once again, Geoff. And thanks for coming on. We'll have you again, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I have been a practitioner of naturopathic and Chinese medicine for over a decade. I have a master's degree of health science, and I am an academic lecturer at Australia's leading natural medicine college. I am available worldwide online for bookings. Simply go to sandyrosshealth.com.